Hi everybody, this is part 6 of the story of Freya and the Mages of Sin. We're getting towards the end now, but of course we've still got some adventure left to go. Just to recap the story, Freya Fjordrider and her 5 wizardly friends plus 1 bulgy dog have gone up against the loggers in the night. While the battle was going on, a megaton mole got its niffly nose sights onto Freya and Dinner and began to hunt them down at surprising speed. Dinner turned coward and made a break for it, sans Freya, but luckily she was saved in the nick of time by the mage Freya, who it seems can turn herself and her horse into wolves at will. They were just congratulating themselves on having escaped the moly mole and considered a return to the battle with the loggers when... And so we begin part 6. Sure, Freya said, wouldn't miss it for... And that's when the black wizard, Uttarba'Stard, came screaming at them. He didn't bother with a flying horse. He just ripped across the night sky on his own power, looking like one of his own dragon birds. My mole! My mole! You killed my mole! Appeared to be what he was shouting, but it was barely intelligible. He was so angry. Angry or insane or both. We never killed him. He's right under there, Freya said, pointing to the new tiny molehill. But the wizard wasn't interested. He gestured at Freya, and black poured out of his finger and swirled around her, freezing her before she could even take another breath, nevertheless defend herself. Forlorn, Freya ducked and rolled when he began to point at her, and the black stuff missed her. She didn't wait around for him to have another go. She vaulted aboard Dinner and clapped her heels to his sides to get him the hell out of range of that black mist that boded no good for her. So much for Fersa's promise to stay out of the fight tonight, she thought to herself as she made a beeline for Tig, yelling for him as she went. She wasn't sure if Faye was alive or dead, but she knew that she was no match for that Uttarba'Stard. Freya needed Tagorli and his much-vaunted powers, and she needed them now. Tagorli was embroiled in his own troubles, but when he saw Freya coming, and he put on a bit of an extra effort and got himself clear by using his magic to push a few loggers at once into a nearby muddy waterhole. He gestured again, and 2 teams of massive horses were freed of their chains to lumber away into the night at a heavy gallop, causing chaos amongst the loggers as they went. Then he called the other mages to him with a sparkling explosion of rainbow light, and they began to make their way towards him across the battlefield. Freya reached him and didn't wait for niceties. Faye, she panted, having used all of her breath for shouting. That Uttarba'Stard has frozen her in some sort of black mist, and he's still there. She pointed back the way she'd come. If he hasn't killed her yet, he's soon going to. The other 3 were riding up now, looking worried. Tagorli didn't use that rainbow signal for nothing. Tig nodded decisively, and in the next breath he had swept them all up in his magic and borne them into the sky and across the tough ground to where Freya had pointed. Freya barely had time to enjoy the view before they were coming to land again. Uttarba'Stard, seize! Tig roared, pointing at the old wizard threateningly with one glowing hand. Faye stood frozen, her beautiful horse as still as she. The magical light shone across the beautiful warrior mage, making her look like some sort of heroic statue, and it shone across their enemy too, but he was no pretty sight. Freya knew a wizard's showdown was no place for her, and she and Dinner were skulking behind the others to stay out of range of the black mist, much as they'd never admit it. Safely away from the front line, she had time to check out the creepy old magic user properly this time, and creepy he was. He was tall and thin, emaciatedly so, with great bony, spindly strangler's hands. His skin was so grey and his cheeks were so hollow that he looked like he really had died some time ago. His hair was grey and thin, plastered in strings across his scalp, and he showed rotten, crooked, grey teeth like fallen tombstones in his mouth as he grimaced at Tig. He had abandoned the bright clothing of his fellow wizards and wore dirty white robes. In his right hand he held a long staff that had an ugly creature carved on the top. Or was it carved? Freya squinted suspiciously at the fangy, toady thing, which seemed to be peering malevolently back at her. Was it? No, surely not. It blinked a slow single eye, then licked the eyeball with a long fat tongue and grinned at her hideously. Ew! Freya put her attention back on the main action, but she kept half an eye on the toad thing too. Uttarba'Stard was saying, "Back away, or I'll turn you all to stone with your friend there." "You and whose army?" said Pen, and she began to sing. She had a beautiful voice, and tendrils of the sound, shining pink and pearly and blue, reached rapidly out for the ancient wizard, who ran backwards to avoid them. "Stop that!" he shouted, pointing his staff at her, but she kept singing and he had to stagger back further to avoid her. Black mist came out to push at the tendrils of Pen's song, but they held firm, came at him again, and he took another step back as his own mist was pushed aside by hers. Shorneeby held up both hands and made a kind of square of them and then pushed the shape at Uttarba'Stard, and the old man stopped backing, stopped everything, and casting his staff away from him, fell to the ground as a flat figure, as flat as a piece of pastry rolled ready to put on a pie. They all paused for a moment, looking untrustingly at the pancake wizard, then took suspicious steps forward until they were all looking down at him. Yep, he looked pretty quiche. Was it really going to be that easy? Woohoo! Shorneeby! Pen sang, and cheerful colour came out of her mouth again and curled around his shoulders to pat him on the back. Whoops! Forgot to turn it off, she said quickly, swiping at her errant magic with her hands. Just watch you don't go using colourful language like that with me again, young lady, Shorneeby said mock grumpily, while smiling at them all. His face and tight leather clothing were still shining with the pinks and pearls of her congratulations, badger hair sticking up every which way. The others were obligingly groaning at his joke, but Freya, who had a crawly feeling down the back of her neck, turned just in time to see the creature that had been at the top of Uttarba'Stard's fallen staff leap away from its mooring and begin to grow. Heads up, wizards, Freya shouted, drawing Grey Gory and starting forward. No way was she giving the thing time to reach megaton mole proportions. That wasn't its plan, though, if plan it could be said to have. Instead, it grew only until it was the size of a small dog, squatting there and expanding like some hideous toad, puffing itself up to croak. And then it began to open its ridiculously large mouth and yarble at them in a very undog or toad-like way, showing teeth that were stupidly long and thin for its size. Tiny eyes sparkled at her in the moonlight. It looked like nothing so much as one of those deep-sea fish that sometimes washed up on the beaches near the town of Pina, only this thing had 4 squatty legs and no fins or tail. It lunged at Freya and its mouth opened wide, bottom jaw flapping down to reveal a gaping maw. Only dog-sized it may be, but it was a fearsome thing, unnatural in a way the mole had not been. Freya slashed at it with her sword and found to the distress of her elbow that it felt as hard as wood and weighed far more than it looked like it should. Her heavy cut didn't even dent the side of the thing's head and never stopped its yarble or creeping approach for a moment. Pen, Drew and Shorneeby were with her now, and all 3 drew swords to join her in the attack. It might have seemed silly to have 4 people all cutting at one little creature, but it inspired such disgust that they were driven to it. Die, Jadju! Freya yelled at it, and she could see Pen's lip curled in disgust at the uncleanness of the thing as she too swiped at it with her sword on the other side of it. They were all swiping and yelling and jumping around like loons while the thing flapped its horrible lips and flashed its beady little eyes and circled squattily around and around, pulling faces at them all one by one. Tig was yelling something behind Freya, but she couldn't take the time to hear him. She brought Grey Gory down directly onto the head of the thing with a shout of expended energy, then felt her teeth clack as the thing moved not a jot, nor showed any injury for her efforts. Die, 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 she said grimly, cutting again with every word and ignoring the jarring of her joints. Hamish, sick him, she vaguely heard Tagorli say, and then Drew's bulbous, wrinkly dog was leaping in from beside Drew and had snatched up the thing in his teeth to run away with it, shaking it hard as he went. What the quiche, Freya said, coming to a standstill with the others and looking around her for the enemy. It was a decoy spell, you fools, Tig said exasperatedly. Our enemy is still behind you. They turned as one and stared to find that Uttarba'Stard was once more rounded and on his feet. Ha! Think the old steam-rolling freezer spell was going to get me? Or magical songs, he said creakily, pointing bony fingers at them all and sending black mist swirling out around them to hold them where they stood. Oh, for Jad's sake, came a rasping voice out of the dark, and a sword went swishing after the voice to take the old wizard's head clean off. It bumped away into the dark, leaving the headless corpse to fall floppily to the ground like a sack of quiche. And that's the end of part 6. We've got one more part to go. I hope you're still riding with me. See you next week. Bye.